Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 22nd of November, 2021. Right, everyone, let's get into it. So, a very interesting last 48-ish hours in, I guess, the Ethereum ecosystem, the wider crypto ecosystem, and I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about right now, but for those who don't, I will give a rundown. Now, I think I'm going to spend quite a little bit of today's episode on this, probably at least half of it, so if you're not interested in hearing me talk about all the drama from the weekend, you can just skip ahead. There's timestamps below. But essentially, it all started, it actually all started back, I think it was like Friday. No, it wasn't Friday. I think it was Saturday, where Kane Warwick put out a tweet, and I can't remember exactly what the tweet said, but a tweet about kind of like some VCs or funds like pumping their bags and dumping or something like that, right? And people showing their true colors. And then Zhu Su, who is the CEO of 3 Hours Capital, one of the big funds in the space, he responded to Kane's tweet and basically called him out and said, hey, you sold tokens as well and you bought all these fancy houses, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then the next day, or I think it was the next day. Yeah, it was the next day. It was on, I think this was on Sunday at 11:28 a.m. Zhu Su put out a little kind of like tweet thread here, 3 tweets, and he starts by saying, yes, I have abandoned Ethereum despite supporting it in the past. Yes, Ethereum has abandoned its users despite supporting them in the past. The idea of sitting around jerking off, watching the burn and concocting purity tests while zero newcomers can afford the chain is gross. Then he goes on to say, Ethereum culture also suffers massively from the founder's dilemma. Everyone is already far too rich to remember that what they originally set out to do. Perhaps a bear market is needed to remind them, or perhaps we must build elsewhere, but this is what it is, nothing new under the sun. And then the final tweet, the reason why a previous tweet has 4K likes in 1 hour is because users are livid that they're promised a vision of the future, then told they have to pay $100 to $1,000 per transaction to enjoy it, and then get told some tales about how they should have been smart enough to buy ETH at $10. So there is so much wrong with these 3 tweets. I don't even really know where to begin. This has been obviously talked about to death on Twitter. There's been a lot of people talking, doing Twitter threads on this, kind of like fighting back against this. But I want to break it down in my own kind of way here. I don't know. I mean, like, you got to look at the incentives here. Zhu Su, he has different incentives to someone like me, right? He runs a fund. He's a billionaire. He loves money, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call him a profit maximalist, but it seems like he is, right? He's all about the money. And you pretty much have to be a profit maximalist if you're a fund. I mean, your fund's performance is pertinent to how much profit you make. So it's dependent on how much profit you make. So it kind of comes with the territory, right? But he's obviously very big on the Avalanche ecosystem lately because he has a lot of Avalanche tokens that he bought early on. I think the price that he got in at was like $14 or whatever. So he has different incentives to someone like me who obviously is very involved with the Ethereum ecosystem, doing Daily Gwei and stuff like that, and hold ETH. And I don't hold any AVAX or anything like that. So different incentives here. But that doesn't mean that he has to spread kind of like outright misinformation and outright lies, if I'm being honest. Because let's break down these tweets. So he says, he's abandoned Ethereum despite supporting it in the past. I mean, and he later put out a tweet thread where he retracted what he said, or kind of went back on what he said and said he was too harsh. He hasn't really abandoned Ethereum. I don't know. Like, I just kind of thought that was a little bit silly there. But basically, in his second part, he says, yes, Ethereum has abandoned its users despite supporting them in the past. I don't understand where this kind of like line of thinking has come from, because where has Ethereum abandoned its users? If the Ethereum ecosystem didn't care about its users, didn't care about onboarding new people, we wouldn't be working on layer 2 scaling solutions at all. We wouldn't be working on layer 1 scaling solutions, which obviously are further out, but they're still coming, right? The stuff that we all know about, like sharding and statelessness, and obviously the merge is required for those things to go ahead. So I don't really get where he's getting this has abandoned its users from. And then the last part of the tweet is what really gets people going. And he knows what he's doing. Sue's not a dumb guy. He knows exactly what he's doing with these tweets. But essentially in the last part, he says, the idea of sitting around, jerking off, watching the burn and concocting purity tests while zero newcomers can afford the chain is gross. Now, what's hilarious about this, and I'm going to go over this in a sec, but what's hilarious about this is that Su, in this tweet on March 6, was pumping EIP 1559. This is not the only tweet that he's pumped to 1559 in, but he did it, right? Remember back in, kind of like he went on the Bankless podcast, he was saying ETH was going to 25K, and then in May we crashed, and it felt like he kind of like used this all as exit liquidity for his ETH long, which he seems to have changed his opinion on these days. But anyway, that's just a little funny thing there. But I think that he knows this, and this is what annoys me, is that Su knows this. He's not dumb. So the fact that he said something like this really annoyed me, because these are not scaling Ethereum and the burn are not kind of like mutually exclusive things, right? The burn at layer one is, I mean, layer one is a settlement layer, right? Like you guys know this. I don't have to explain this again to you. Layer one Ethereum is the settlement layer. Burning fees at layer one, burning is amazing for Ethereum for a number of different reasons, right? And it's amazing for ETH as an asset, and that all has kind of on-flow effects from there. But the thing is that like, just because we like ERP1559, we like the burn, we like the high fees because it leads to more ETH being burned, doesn't mean that we like the high fees for end users. And this is exactly why we have the layer 2, for regular users. And that's exactly why we have the layer 2 ecosystem playing out. So, you know, him saying this, I think he just did this to bait people, really, honestly. The whole thing seems like bait to me, but I think this part of the tweet was really to get people going. This is classic kind of like populist tactics, right? Appeal to kind of like the everyday man, make it out as if there's some grand enemy that they have to be angry at, and then get all this attention. Because look at the engagement this tweet got. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not dumb. I know exactly what he's doing here, and there's a lot of Ethereans that aren't dumb either. We've seen this before. I mean, I felt like over the weekend I was transported back to 2019, because this is the stuff that we dealt with all the time in 2019 and even 2018. Just like pure, like unfiltered bullshit about Ethereum, and for it to come from someone like Zhu, who, you know, is considered by many people a respected voice in the ecosystem, has a massive following. You know, I think he's got 300 something thousand followers, almost 350,000 followers, right? For him to say this is kind of gross, because it really doesn't make any sense to me. It literally is a straight out lie, because there's no truth in what he said in this first tweet. Then the next tweet I think is even more a lie, where he says Ethereum culture suffers massively from the founder's dilemma. Everyone is already far too rich to remember what they originally set out to do. Are you serious, Sue? Like, are you serious? Most of the Ethereum core devs are not far too rich. Most of them didn't buy ETH early on. Most of them weren't even around in the early days of Ethereum. Most of them don't even give a shit about money. They're building stuff. They're building, the core protocol work. They're building the layer 2 stuff because they really, really want to change the world. They really want to build something. They want to be able to scale Ethereum while kind of like retaining that decentralization and security that we all know and love. And the thing is, all of the most major innovations that have happened within the crypto ecosystem have happened within Ethereum, despite the fees. There's another tweet that I think like Antonio from dYdX put out, which I'm going to talk about soon, about how like Ethereum hasn't innovated in 4 years, which is just insane to me. Like I'll go over that, but essentially, I don't think that there's anyone in Ethereum culture that suffers from this founder's dilemma. Maybe there are some kind of like project founders here and there that got really rich and just kind of like abandoned their project. But for the most part, I mean, think about all the people that have been in this ecosystem for a long time, and how many people are still working on the same kind of stuff. Like, perfect example is Vitalik. I don't know if he's a billionaire right now with his ETH holdings. I think he is a billionaire with his ETH holdings right now. He's doing exactly the same thing that he's been doing since Ethereum kind of was invented, since he kind of published the first white paper. He's still, he's not obviously as public anymore because he took a step back, but he's doing a lot of research. He's still involved, obviously, with the kind of like quote unquote ETH2 effort, all that sort of stuff there. And obviously, it's not just him. There's so many people like this that are still doing these sorts of things. There's so many people out there that have more than enough money to just go away and never pay attention to Ethereum again. But they're still here. They're still building. They're still doing things. So I don't understand where Sue's getting this idea that Ethereum culture is suffering from founder's dilemma, where everyone got too rich and now we're just kind of stagnating. Ethereum is innovating faster than it ever has before right now, like ever. And this is coming from someone who's been around since 2017. And obviously earlier than that, there was less innovation, because 2016 and 2015 for Ethereum, it really wasn't that like active back then. There was hardly anyone. But now Ethereum is innovating more than it ever has before. So I really don't understand this kind of thing. And then he says, perhaps we need a bear market to remind them. Are you serious? Like, we already went through a bear market where, a lot of the Ethereum culture was built. What we need a bear market for is to flush out all the crap that's just going up on these baseless narratives and this absolute shit that's going on right now. That's what we need a bear market for. But I'll digress on that point. And then the last tweet's just kind of like a throwaway thing. Reason why this tweet has 4K likes in 1 hour. I'm sorry, Sue, but the reason your tweet has 4K likes in 1 hour is because you have almost 350,000 followers. Like, don't give me that bullshit that everyone's like kind of like angry at Ethereum. Obviously, people are angry at Ethereum for the high fees, but the thing is, unfortunately, we live in this kind of like quote unquote post-truth world where no one gives a shit about the facts anymore. They just believe whatever's kind of put on the internet, which is really sad, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's Sue's tweet. That's kind of like the background of how all this stuff started and how all the kind of like stuff you've seen over the weekend started. Tim Beiko is the first first thing I wanted to kind of like highlight. He did a thread about, giving his thought. I mean, for those who don't know, Tim Beiko is part of the All Core devs, but he gave his thoughts on all the stuff that happened over the weekend. This is a really great thread. You should go read it. But essentially, what he broke down here is why, Ethereum has taken so long to get to this point in terms of kind of like lowering gas fees or scaling at layer 1, in terms of kind of like taking their time to make sure everything's done securely. Why the ETH 1.x roadmap, for those who remember that, was kind of like abandoned and for a better kind of roadmap. Why things changed as time went on. Why things have to be taken slowly because Ethereum is a $500 billion network, and there's more tweets in here that you should read. So definitely go give that thread a read. And then Byron from Loopring had just a great one tweet reminder here where he said, Ethereum's roadmap is to scale through layer 2. Ethereum L1 equals max decentralization settlement layer. L2 equals the transaction application layer or execution layer. Comparing other quote unquote Ethereum killer L1s to Ethereum L1 is useless. They're competing with L2. And critics conveniently ignore this. They do conveniently ignore this all the time because it doesn't fit their narrative. It doesn't fit what they're trying to sell to you. And the hilarious thing is about a lot of these L1s is they're literally Ethereum. They're forks of Geth. They're forks of Geth, modified Geth. The most popular one right now that everyone's talking about, like there's a new one every week, but right now is the Avalanche C chain. You know what that is? It's a modified version of Geth with a 2 times the block gas limit that Ethereum has right now, and their own consensus mechanism. That's it. That's all there is to it. Their fees are already creeping up because their network utilization is going up. They have MEV now. You know what? The reason why the fees on Ethereum are so high, a large part is due to MEV. And MEV is obviously minor extractable value that I've discussed before. And I've told you guys before, the reason why people are willing to pay these high fees is because they're extracting some sort of value in some way. So any kind of like layer 1 that's not actually innovating is just like copying Geth and like raising the gas limit. That's just that's just like not a long-term sustainable thing, not a long-term healthy thing. So great tweet from Byron here. And then Scott Lewis, actually this is related to Antonio, so I'm going to put this here. And then Eric Connor had a great tweet where he said, imagine thinking the Ethereum community isn't working on scaling, and he shows L2beat.com with all the kind of like Ethereum projects that are kind of scaling right now. I mean, look at Bobber Network, 559% increase in TVL. I think that's like the last 24 hours or something like that, because they have their token incentives going. And that's another thing, which I'm going to talk about in a sec. Just wait until these L2s have tokens. You're going to see the narrative completely change. But anyway, I like that Eric is highlighting this again for people. People love to ignore this. The TVL on L2s is at $6 billion right now, guys. And it's just up. It's been up only for a while now, and it's going to keep being up only. We don't even have native tokens for these things yet. Some of them do, but most of them don't, right? The generalized ones don't, at least. And then ChainLinkGod has a great thread I wanted to highlight about blockchain scalability, decentralization, throughput, gas, and modular blockchains. Definitely go give this a read. It's a full breakdown. I mean, this is an amazing thread. It covers everything, so definitely give it a read. Of course, it'll be linked in the YouTube description. Chris Dixon has a great thread on the myth of Eth Killers and why demand for blockchains will always outpace supply. Give that a read. But kind of my note on this is basically, I've said it before, demand for block space is literally infinite. It is never going to be, there is never going to be enough block space to fill the demand. So scaling is not a thing that happens like right now. Scaling is a multi-decade thing. It's going to keep happening. There's going to keep being improvements made over time, and they have to be made in a sustainable and healthy way. They can't just be made in a way that kind of like gives you short-term scalability at the expense of long-term health. That's not the Ethereum roadmap. And yes, I know people are frustrated with Ethereum for its high gas fees, but there are other options now for you to use. No one has ever shamed people, at least no one that I've seen, or at least none of the Ethereum kind of like core community members has ever shamed anyone for using another chain. We're not like Bitcoin maximalists. We don't do purity tests. I don't know where these people are coming from that's saying we're doing purity tests and all that sort of stuff. We don't do that. And I haven't seen anyone do that in kind of like any big way. And I have absolutely zero problem with people using these other things. What I have a problem with is the misinformation, the lies, the misleading marketing, the selling something as innovation when in reality you're literally just a centralized Ethereum. That's what I've always had an issue with. I really big issue. So from that perspective, I guess like use these things, but just know that they're not long-term sustainable. Most of them, they're very kind of like short-sighted. They're not being built the same way Ethereum is being built. And that's exactly why I'm not a fan of them, by the way. Not because I'm a quote-unquote ETH maxi, because they are not doing what Ethereum is doing, which is what I want to see kind of like be built as the backbone of this system. of the new financial system and kind of like new internet. But also in to Chris Dixon's thread here, another thing is that there's this myth out there, and there's a blog post called The Myth of the Infrastructure Phase, which basically posits that you need to build infrastructure first and then the users will come. This is the biggest load of shit that I've ever kind of like heard in this industry, because it doesn't map with any reality at all. No matter what reality you look at, it doesn't map to it. And here's a perfect analogy for you. When a new town is being built, do they build the houses first or do they build the shops first? They build the bloody houses first, because if you don't build the houses, there's no one to go to the shops. There's no one there in the town. So why the hell would you build the shops first? And not just the shops, all the supporting infrastructure, the railways, right? The roads, all that sort of stuff. Just everything around there, the shop, obviously the shopping centers, the medical facilities, everything like that. That doesn't get built right before the houses are there, or without the houses. Sometimes they'll get built together, right? A lot of the time, state government, local councils are really like kind of like blasé about that, and the developers of properties have a bigger incentive to build the houses first. But essentially, there's no point building kind of like a shopping center when there's no one around there to go to it. This doesn't make any sense, right? The same is true for anything really, but the same is true in the crypto space. Let's take Solana as an example. They currently offer, quote unquote, 50,000 transactions per second. Do they have the demand for that? No, not at all. Not even close to that. If you go to Solana Beach, which is one of the block explorers, you will see that I think that they quote the TPS is like 2,000 or something. Most of that TPS is actually validator votes, which no other blockchain counts as part of their TPS, by the way. If the Ethereum beacon chain was counting its votes as TPS, it would be something like 700 TPS. So that's not even counted. So the real TPS of Solana is much, much less than that. Probably in the low hundreds. Not even. I wouldn't even say it's in the low hundreds. And if you kind of like can take that in consideration, what they're doing right now is that they've got scale for 50,000 TPS, but there's no demand to meet it. So they're essentially wasting all this money by requiring all these beefy hardware and paying out all these SOL tokens to subsidize these people for running this beefy hardware for no demand, or little to no demand, right? Compared to something like Ethereum, which has incredible amounts of demand. And you know what? If Ethereum doubled its block size tomorrow, within a couple of weeks, that block size will be filled up again. We'd be back to where we were, because there's just too much demand, like way too much demand here. So the infrastructure does not come first. The users come first, then you build infrastructure. That's why over the last 18 months, more progress has been made on layer 2 scaling than ever before, because there is now an incentive for everyone to work on it. There is a financial incentive to work on it. There is a technological incentive to do it, more so than there was previously, because of the fact that it is needed sorely right now, and you know the pain is being felt by end users, and we have the demand to meet the supply. And even saying that, right, even these layer 2s, I mean, Arbitrum and Optimism aren't even anywhere near their max capacity. Like, they're probably like less than 1% of what their max capacity can be, and they're not full yet. When they introduce a token, that may change pretty quickly, but right now there's just not enough demand for any of this sort of stuff. So yeah, on that note as well, wow, I'm already at 18 minutes here, so I've gone on a little bit of a rant. But anyway, a little bit of an alpha leak from Angelfish here, who works at zksync, where she said, in the next 3 months, we're going to get zksync, the first community-owned EVM-compatible ZK rollup on mainnet. So next 3 months, zksync is going to be on mainnet. That's pretty cool. And like EVM-compatible ZK rollup on mainnet. Going to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm obviously super bullish for zksync there. But little alpha leak. And then the other tweet that I wanted to talk about was this one from Antonio from dYdX, who I have kind of lost a lot of respect for, because he should know way better than what he does. But it's a bit of a tweet thread here, but the one thing that I wanted to focus on is this comment where he says, I can't think of a single 10x useful improvement Ethereum has made in the past 4 years. Are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, are you kidding me? Like it's like he hasn't paid any attention to Ethereum core development, even though he built dYdX on an Ethereum layer 2. He's been in the Ethereum ecosystem for quite a while now. It's just really bad that he put this tweet out, and it's just full of crap. Anyway, I think Hasu had the best reply to this tweet, where he said, truth be told, other than choosing different points on the decentralization cost spectrum, what 10 times useful improvements have other L1s made in the last 4 years? The answer is nothing, guys. Nothing. There is nothing out there that is a 0 to 1 innovation on top of what Ethereum is at layer 1. Absolutely nothing. I'm not just saying that. It's literally true. Go ask anyone to point out to you what's a 10 times innovation. There is nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's why I replied to Hasu by saying, I would argue that the 10 times improvements have actually been made at layer 2. ZK Tech, guys, I can't stress how much ZK Tech is a breakthrough to you guys, not just in crypto, but just generally in compute. It is going to change everything. I literally can't stress that enough. I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. It's going to change everything. And then I said, layer 2 isn't exclusively an Ethereum thing, of course, but due to Ethereum prioritizing decentralization over scale at layer 1, we got insanely cool innovations like rollups. If Ethereum L1 was not limited, if we just said, all right, screw it, we're going to increase the block size like 100 times what it is right now, and then we're just going to let everyone go wild on layer 1, decentralization and network health be damned, we wouldn't have got rollups. I'm telling you right now, we would not have got rollups because there would have been no necessity for it. So we bred necessity for rollups by keeping L1 decentralized and secure, and now we have in my opinion, the best way to scale a blockchain ever, which is the modular design of splitting up the concerns and doing different things at different layers. I think that we would never have had that if not for the limitations here. Obviously, on the other side of things, probably a lot of these L1s would not have gained traction if Ethereum could scale at L1. But that's just a short-term noise thing. I really do truly believe a lot of these L1s are on their kind of like last legs here. Once the L2 ecosystem really takes off, it's just like game over for them. But yeah, it's going to take longer than people would like, obviously. And then, Scott's kind of like tweet here, what he basically says, small reminder, StarkWare is an example of Ethereum execution over the last kind of like 4 years. The Ethereum Foundation actually gave StarkWare an enormous grant to get going, the same way they fund ETH clients, ETH2, and everyone else. And this was way back in August of 2018. So in August of 2018, the Ethereum Foundation gave a $4 million grant to StarkWare with 6K ETH of performance-based bounties. So another 6,000 ETH on top of that, right? And the thing is, even at kind of like $100, that was even at $100 ETH, that was a $600,000 bonus. If StarkWare had kept that ETH, which I'm pretty sure they would have, that's a lot of money now, right? 6K ETH at $4,000, it's a lot more money than it was back then. But the thing is $4 million may not sound like a lot, but in August of 2018, when ETH had basically dumped the whole year at this point, right, and it wasn't done dumping in 2018, and the Ethereum Foundation was like, well, we're going to give this new kind of super experimental team, StarkWare, in August of 2018, we're going to give them $4 million. That's absolutely massive. So most of the innovation that you're seeing is coming out of, pretty much all of it actually is coming out of the Ethereum ecosystem. So I just wanted to highlight that. Ryan Berckmans had a good thread here saying, 4 years ago, what Ethereum didn't have and what it has today. Ethereum had no roll-up-centric roadmap. We were only 2 years into what's responsibly been a 6-year upgrade for proof of stake. Light client support was only in the research phase. Now it's kind of live with Altair. And it was unclear how sharding may help scale Ethereum. But now it's clear because we have data shards. And then he goes on to kind of like a little thread here with different things there. So, and that's just kind of like a few things. There's so many different things that's happened in Ethereum over the last 4 years. So yeah, I don't know where Antonio got that from. And then Justin Drake puts it nicely here where he says, Ethereum will incrementally scale 10 times every single year for the next 4 years. 100x from rollups and 100x from data sharding. We've put the foundations in place. We have rollups, we have beacon chain. Once the merge is done, then we'll have sharding. And then from there, it's just exponential scaling. I mean, you guys know all this. I'm not going to rehash it there. I know I'm coming up on time here. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was L2. I said, I put out this tweet where I said, L2 should launch tokens so we can all be friends again. I'm guarantee you right now, the minute one of these generalized L2s, Arbitrum, Optimism, zksync, or StarkWare, does a token, that is the minute that the narrative changes. You're going to find the narrative changes in a matter of weeks because people are going to have skin in the game. They're going to have something to defend. They're going to have bags to defend. They're going to have an incentive to go and shill these things. And then these layer 2 platforms are going to do liquidity mining. Then a shit ton of TVL and a shit ton of liquidity is going into these things. It's going to bootstrap the entire ecosystem. And people are going to realize how much better of an experience a layer 2 is compared to any L1 out there. And they're going to realize kind of like how Ethereum has actually been working on scaling because it's only so much we can do to tell them that all this stuff's coming and some of it's here already, but until they actually use it, a lot of them are just going to cause ETH maxes and not believe us. That's going to change completely when a token is issued. I'm going to be honest, guys. I feel like a token for one of these L2s is coming much sooner than people think. I think zksync Might be the first one to do it within the next 3 months, to be honest. If they're not, it might be Arbitrum. Optimism seems much more conservative on this than kind of like Arbitrum or zksync, or StarkWare seems conservative as well. But it's kind of like one of them will go first and the rest will follow. And I'm interested to see how that all plays out. But they're coming. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say that most of them will have tokens in the next 6 months. That's my kind of bet. Because if they don't, they're going to get forked. And the fork's going to put tokens on. The forks are going to usurp them. Boba Network is a modified fork of Optimism. The reason why they have more TVL is because they have a token. It's just simple incentives, guys. This is not anything new. So I am expecting that to happen, and you're going to see how quickly the narrative changes. Final thing about all this drama was that A J Warner from Arbitrum, or from Off-Chain Labs, who makes Arbitrum, shared this kind of like Discord message that Vitalik put in the Arbitrum Discord, where he said, by the way, just wanted to say great job to the Arbitrum team and community for all their hard work so far. I know it's frustrating to deal with both the people saying Ethereum doesn't care about its users because high fees, and the Ethereum people who actually have let their wealth blind themselves to non-millionaires' need for affordable fees. But you are a central part of the solution, and it's great to see all the progress done. You all should be proud of getting accepted as a withdrawal method by Binance. Hopefully many more follow their example, and we get decentralized cross-rollup bridge tech soon as well. Positive vibes, putting that out there. Great to see Vitalik dropping in. He wants to see Ethereum scale more than anyone, right? And he's been working hard on that for many years here. So very positive vibes there. All right, I think that's everything for the drama. That's 25 minutes. I know I focused the most of this episode on that, but I actually think it's super important to focus on it because, I don't know kind of like what the makeup of my audience is. I'm going to assume it's a mix of people, newcomers, veterans, maybe you've been here for a few months. But I really feel like it's always worth kind of talking about this sort of stuff. And this is part of my roots as well. I mean, I dealt with this through 2018 and 2019. As I said, I felt like I was transported back to 2019 when I saw all this playing out, because this is exactly what the Bitcoin maximalists said about Ethereum every bloody week and almost every day in 2019. We had to fight this. And it's funny because, like I said a couple of weeks ago, that I would stop getting involved in this Twitter crap. But I don't know, like that is the kind of like line from, I think, The Godfather, where he says, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. I felt that over this weekend. And I was in the city with my fiance this weekend, and I was trying to get away from all this sort of stuff. But of course, crypto never sleeps, and all this stuff happened. Crazy stuff going on. But yeah, it was, on a more positive note as well, it was really amazing to see the amount of Ethereum community members come to Ethereum's defense. There are so many awesome, passionate, ardent supporters of Ethereum now, that I feel like I can just act as like a megaphone and act as kind of like a retweet machine for these sorts of things. I don't actually have to put out the threads myself. And I'm just going to let those people kind of like do this sort of stuff because, they're probably newer. They're kind of like less, I guess, worn down by all of this than I am. But I am always willing to kind of discuss it on the Refuel or on my videos and things like that, and make sure that you guys know kind of like what's going on and give context here, because it can be very hard to follow this sort of stuff. There's so many egos, incentives, there's so much crap out there that I feel like it's worth always going over. But anyway, I leave it at that. Few more updates to get through before I end today's episode. So this was, I think, the other biggest update that went out on, I think it was Friday. Mahalo from Polygon submitted a proposal to deploy Uniswap V3 on Polygon. So you can check out this governance proposal here. This is, I think, go to a vote eventually, but there's a lot of people in support of this. Hayden Adams from Uniswap is also in support of this, which is really awesome to see. And to be honest, there's no reason why Uniswap shouldn't be on the Polygon POS chain at this point. I truly believe it should. It belongs there. The POS chain is a super Ethereum aligned EVM chain. Definitely need to get it on there. But it was great to see Hayden support this. I mean, the wider Ethereum community seems in very much support of this, and I'm sure all of you guys would be as well. So very much looking forward to seeing when the vote happens for this and for it to go live on Polygon. I'm sure there's going to be some Matic incentives as well on there. So definitely go check that out. And now an update from ENS. So the ENS homepage now has a governance landing page with links to important governance resources, such as the token claim website, Discord forum, governance docs, and the Mirror blog. So if you're interested in keeping up with ENS governance, definitely go check this out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. New project got introduced on Friday called DeFrag, which is a decentralized non-custodial liquidity market protocol where borrowers can use NFT assets as collateral. This is pretty cool. I mean, I've seen a few of these projects before, I think, but I'm always really interested in these because, right now you can't really, I mean, you can in some kind of ways, but it's not really ubiquitous using your NFTs as collateral to borrow against. And I think why it matters a lot for NFTs, maybe more so than just normal tokens, is that with NFTs, you have to find a buyer, right? You have to find a buyer, and it kind of has to sit there if you want a certain price for it. It's not like a liquidity pool that you can just dump into. Some NFTs have this with fractionalization and stuff like that, but for the most part, you can't really do that. And a lot of the times you don't even want to sell them. So what do you do with it? Like, you can't really do much with it these days. You can fractionalize it, I think, and do some stuff with that. But being able to put it up as kind of like collateral and borrow against it, I think is extremely powerful. Could you imagine being able to kind of like put your CryptoPunk, your Cool Cat, your Bored Ape or whatever up as collateral, borrow some stablecoins against it, and go buy some ETH, or borrow ETH against it and just hold the ETH and do like a leverage long ETH bet with your NFT as collateral? Yes, I mean, the liquidation risk might be high depending on how much you borrow, and there's all those kind of like things to consider. But I think it's very interesting to think about, because I think a lot of punk holders are definitely very kind of like heavy ETH people. So when you think about it like that, I mean, people would love to, I think, put their punk up as collateral to kind of like leverage long ETH, and then without having to kind of like trade punks or speculate on them. So definitely something interesting to keep an eye on. And it's just a new project that I came across over the last few days. Final thing here to round us out. So Eric kind of put out another great tweet where he said, remember when all the miners were going to leave after EIP 1559? And he's got a screenshot here of the Ethereum network hash rate chart, which is at an all-time high. Remember when on the refill, when I was talking about this, remember the miners saying that they were going to stop EIP 1559 from happening, and I told you guys that's not going to happen because miners do not control Ethereum. And then remember when I told you that they were getting like a pay cut with 1559, but they're kind of like not really, because they're going to still have the tips, they're going to still have MEV, and actually that played out as well, because now, I saw a recent report, I think it was, I can't remember, it was from Galaxy Digital, I think, where they basically calculated that miners are making more money than they have ever made before, from the block reward, obviously, but also from fees. So even though fees are being burned, which actually benefits them because they're mining ETH, which, as fees get burned, ETH price naturally appreciates over time. They're making more money than them, and that's why the Ethereum hash rate is at all-time highs. So, and then I replied to his tweet by saying what that chart is going to look like once the merge happens, which is basically the turkey fallacy, where it says, 1,001 days in the life of a Thanksgiving turkey. They think they're okay for 1,000 days, and then they get killed for Thanksgiving on like the 1,001th day, and kind of like the chart just dumps. That's exactly what's going to happen here, because as soon as Ethereum switches to proof of stake, the hash rate goes to zero because there's no more mining on Ethereum. But they know that's coming, and they should be preparing for that, of course. So that's interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see how many GPUs flood the market as well, because there's actually been a GPU shortage due to Ethereum mining. And I'm curious to see like what happens when, the merge happens, how much of those flood the market. And now there's going to be like an oversupply of these things, because there's not many other profitable chains that you can mine with GPUs right now. I think there's a few others, like maybe Zcash, I think, maybe. I can't remember exactly. I don't think Ethereum Classic is GPU mineable anymore. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't been kind of keeping up and keeping tabs on that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see as well. So yeah. Cool. Funny just to see that the hash rate is at all-time highs, given all the FUD that there was around 1559 from the miners. But miners follow incentives, as they always will. But I think I'm going to end it there. So I guess, sorry for the rant for most of this episode, guys. But as I said, I really felt it was important to cover all that sort of stuff. It was the most FUD Ethereum has faced since, I think, 2019, if I'm being honest. And it's just insane that it's happening, even though all the wild success that Ethereum has had and continues to have. And the fact that the criticisms are all basically lies, like pretty much lies, means that we're on the right path. So I would say that kind of like just stick to what we've been doing. We'll be fine. We'll scale via layer 2, and then this will just kind of like all be a distant memory eventually. So yeah. But anyway, leaving it at that. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the newsletter. Join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.